right, everyone, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. Tennessee WildCast, the weekly podcast show of the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. I'm Doug Markham, and you are?
Jason Harmon.
Jason Harmon. Glad to have you here.
Good to be here.
It's good to be here. It's good to have y'all here. The show is all about the agency, which is all about all of y'all because the sportsmen of Tennessee pay for us.
Yep.
And, of course, a lot of folks that like to watch wildlife, help in many ways, and supporting the wildlife that's out there. And anyway, the show's about you and things that are being done that help you go out and enjoy what you do outside, because we want to get you outside.
Yes, we do.
We want to get you outside.
That's what this show's all about.
We had a guy get outside the other day in the Crossville area.
We did.
He got outside. Look, this winter, I have not been fishing. You haven't been fishing.
I haven't been fishing, no.
But everything I'm hearing is the fish are biting because they probably think it's April. You know,
it is a little bit warmer.
It's been warm, and a lot of people are catching fish. And we had a man the other day head over to, I forget the name of the lake, but he caught a state record yellow perch.
Yes.
For us. And you can go on our Facebook and learn more about it. But it's the one that he's holding, I guess, facing y'all. It's the bigger one, okay? That's 2 point.
His right hand.
Yeah, his right hand. And so which one? Looks like his left hand from where I'm standing. But anyway, it's 2.3 pounds. And in Tennessee, that is a huge yellow perch. And a lot of you are probably thinking, what's a yellow perch? Well, I've caught one or two of them out of Kentucky Lake. They tend to run in our river systems more, although he caught it at a small lake, I think, over in the Crossville area. Took it to the Crossville office, and Mimi over there happened to be there, and she was excited, and she documented all this, and she wrote a great story that's out on our Facebook page all about this guy and the fish that he caught. I didn't see any secrets on how he caught them, but they are in our waters, and they're a lot of fun. I tried to chase them in Canada a few years ago, and I caught a few, but about half the size of what he's got right there.
Well, that's normally, you normally catch half the size.
Half the size, but I'll take it if I catch anything. But anyway, it's another state record. Look, we've had a state record perch. It is pending. We always have to say that pending word.
Yeah,
it's pending. Mm-hmm. And then we got a tilapia that's now a state record. And I know tilapia is not everywhere, but it's still a cool fish.
Yeah, and they're catching a lot of those in Old Hickory.
Old Hickory Lake. It's only one or two places you can catch tilapia, one. And then we had the state record brook trout caught about a year ago below Caney Fork. And then about almost 2 years ago, February 13th, 2 years ago, we had the state record largemouth bass caught. So. Yep. And it was caught in February. So see, with this cold water, these big fish like to bite in the cold.
Yep.
And they're often full of eggs or starting to get full of eggs. And so it's a good time to go fishing and catch a state record or just catch fish. Anyway, anything else?
Just go visit our Facebook pages, Twitter pages, Instagram. We're on Instagram now, and catch up on what we're doing. There's a lot of information out there.
Yep. We all went to a meeting the other day, commission meeting, and the waterfowl season has been almost set. Just want to remind you that information's all in our newsroom, in the website, or on Facebook too. And it looks like you duck hunters are going to have a 60-day season next year, pretty much like this year. Right. They'll set it for sure in February, but the presentation was over in no time, which usually indicates that there's no problem. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has given the state 60 days and a pretty liberal bag limit, and I don't see any reason why our commission won't go ahead and approve that.
Yep.
So we'll report on that next month. And, we're reporting when we have these meetings, you're putting up stuff out on our site, the full commission meeting.
TWRA TV, you can go watch it there. You can watch it on YouTube, our YouTube channel. Same place you can watch this show.
And we're tweeting while we're there. So if you're a Twitterer, if you want to go see what we're doing while we're there.
Or a Facebooker.
We did live Facebook the other day. So we're learning here and all this stuff. And we want to keep you informed as quickly as we can.
And you wanted to hit on this fish here, too.
I did. Thanks. Yeah, before we get our guest, we will. On. Yeah.
What is that? That looks like a dinosaur.
Yeah, I do have his name in front of me. This is George Allen, and George caught this fish below the Caney Fork Dam, the Center Hill Dam, the Caney Fork River, and this is a sturgeon. He was fishing for trout. He was jigging on the bottom with a spoon, and this thing bit it. They're eating fish. They're not sifters. They like to eat meat. And so he caught this fish. I don't know how much it weighed, but I'll tell you right now, as large as it looks, it's probably going to grow 3 times more than that, maybe 4. That's a sturgeon.
It's almost about 3 foot long, looks like.
Yeah, I'd love to catch one. That's a sturgeon. Mr. Allen caught it, gave us permission to use that photograph. He did release the fish because that's the law on sturgeon right now. If you catch one, you got to let it go. And we're tracking those things a lot. I don't know if that one had any kind of tracking device on it, but we've been tracking them, watching them. They're going all over the place. We released a bunch at Shelby Park in Nashville, Tennessee, right downtown. 8 or 10 years ago, and I'm thinking that might be one of them that we released.
Probably was.
When they were a lot smaller, about the length of his tail back in those days. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Allen, for sending that. And just if you catch one, throw it back, because they're all in the Tennessee River. They actually started over east stocking them before they moved them here in Middle Tennessee.
They have a big sturgeon fest out there on the east part of the state.
One day somebody's going to catch one that probably weighs a couple of 100 pounds. And maybe Tucker. It might be about the size. It could be by then. All right, let's introduce our guest. I've been looking forward to getting on here. This is Dr. Brad Miller. And Dr. Brad Miller, or Dr. Miller, works for us, and he is our elk person. He's the head of our elk program, and you have a cool job. People want to be Dr. Brad Miller.
Well, thanks. I don't know. After all that fish talk, I'm ready to switch to fisheries.
Well, with the rest of it, we're going to go with elk because you have what a lot of people would prize, whether they're going to hunt on a few of them or whether they just get to look at them. And before we get into the elk itself and talk about the characteristics of an elk and where you can see them and all that kind of stuff, let's talk about how you got there. How did you become an elk biologist?
Well, I'm from East Tennessee, so I grew up in Knoxville. Grew up hunting where I'm working now, which is kind of interesting and unique. My education, I went to the University of Tennessee, did the wildlife and fisheries major and got a master's there and did a lot of, habitat work and fire use and things. And then went on and got a PhD working with white-tailed deer primarily, doing a lot of habitat work, genetic work. And then my first real job, I was the statewide deer program coordinator in Arkansas.
Arkansas, okay.
And I also supervised their elk program coordinator. So for several years I was hand in hand with him, and then served as interim elk coordinator there for a period, and ultimately moved up to assistant chief and supervised deer, bear, elk, waterfowl, turkey, and some others. So I've kind of been involved in elk for a number of years, and even my time at UT as a grad student, I worked on the elk program, went out and recovered mortalities, got to fly for them once, and it's kind of been a long time circle way back around to kind of come home and get to spend some time with them and learn more about them and get to interact with them just like I did 15 years ago.
That's a lot of fun. So you
cool.
are back home, and anytime you get that doctorate degree, you put a lot of work in before you started working. So you were doing a lot of work before you ever started making money.
Yeah. I've been doing the wildlife field and doing white-tailed deer research and working with elk and turkeys and for a number of years. And it's a lot of fun. It's a little bit different working as a poor student eating ramen noodles to getting a full-time job, but it's good to be in this position and be able to work with some great people and get back in East Tennessee and work with it's quite an animal.
It is. Is it the largest animal in Tennessee?
Yeah, I would guess so. I mean, there's probably some buffalo here and there in a pen,
right?
But yeah, I mean, a bull, a good mature bull, it's going to be 800 pounds plus.
And if somebody wants to know, elk aren't all over Tennessee. They used to be hundreds of years ago, right? We had them everywhere.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's early accounts from a couple of hundred years ago of bison and elk on the Cumberland Plateau, and the whole landscape was different then. It was much more open, more grassy, savanna, open oak woodland kind of situations. We don't have that anymore. We're more of a closed canopy forest, but it's really nice that we've got the opportunity to reintroduce these kinds of species and manage them and have them available for public use.
Where are they? And if you're looking at a map, where would you find elk in Tennessee?
Right. So, if somebody was wanting to go see an elk, the North Cumberland Wildlife Management Area is, state property that we have the majority of the elk on that. There's also elk on private land, but we're talking, Claiborne County, Campbell County, Scott County. It's kind of the main
Would you call
body
it
of
the
herd.
Plateau?
Yeah,
we're east of the plateau.
We're a little east, but
okay.
but it's still Cumberland Plateau. Yeah. But if somebody wanted to actually go out and see an elk with a really good likelihood of seeing it, there is an elk viewing tower just north of La Follette, Tennessee, and you could Google Hatfield Knob Elk Viewing Tower, and it's got directions to get there.
And we're going to tell them about that place in a minute, but just a little history on. I was lucky enough to go to the first release of elk. Oh gosh, I can't believe how long it was, back in 2000. And it was a snowy day. It took hours to get to where we were going. It was so cool. And we took a lot of photographs and watched them get released. They were brought from Canada. Is that correct?
Right.
And released here. Long trip through the ice. I remember talking to a guy named Dan Hicks, and he was a nervous wreck because he'd driven them back in these big trucks, he and others. And anyway, it was pretty cool. How many elk through the years, beginning in 2000, it looks like we released 50. About how many have we released through the years?
I think it's 201 or 203. I'd have to look at my notes.
Yeah, I can see it on here, 201.
Okay,
right.
there we go.
All right, and are we through with that portion of that probably?
Yeah, probably with disease concerns, it's more difficult to reintroduce animals and move animals around. You're not moving a single species; you're moving a whole ecosystem when you're moving an individual animal. And really, we've got a lot of elk. We've got a really good foundation. We're bouncing around maybe 400 elk, in that Cumberland area. So I don't see a need to bring more in anytime soon.
What do you do as an elk biologist on a day-to-day thing, every day? I don't know if every day is different for you, or you go out with tracking devices, you sit in your office and do paperwork. What does an elk biologist in Tennessee do every day?
Right, all of that.
Yeah.
It's pretty varied. I've got your everyday administration stuff where you're dealing with bills and invoices and just general paperwork. But then there's the fun stuff where you're able to get out, do elk surveys in the fall where you're counting elk. You may get out in the night with a thermal imaging unit and record
Pretty
elk.
cool.
We've got 18 or so elk with radio transmitters. We're able to go out and kind of follow those around. Occasionally we fly for elk and use receivers to locate elk on the ground from a fixed wing airplane. A lot of different stuff. If we have mortalities, I can take those and go submit them for any kind of testing that may be required. I work with the hunters that are lucky enough to get drawn in our elk hunt. Work with helping to set hunt frameworks. So, it's a variety of stuff.
Okay, and we'll get to the hunting part in a minute. There is a small hunting season zone,
right?
Not like the states where you might have thousands of hunters, and we'll explain that in a minute because we have an elk population back, but it's never going to be a gigantic elk population. It's solid, it's good, but you're not going to see them from Memphis to Mountain City, right?
No.
Okay. No. And because of their size and what they can do and all that. But how do the local folks, Brad, how do they react to these elk over there?
Well, I guess like anything, it depends on who you ask.
Right.
You're talking about having elk from Memphis to Mountain City. Mm-hmm. We have a restoration area that's several 100,000 acres, and that's kind of where we want our elk to be.
The North Cumberland Wildlife Management Area.
That plus some adjacent.
Okay.
Yeah. So North Cumberland, it's about 200,000 acres or so. But we have an area set aside where we feel like we can have the elk. They're not going to cause any issues with agriculture or whatever. And we've got a lot of folks that love elk, and then of course we've got folks that are impacted by elk. Mm-hmm. Elk may use their fields or whatever. So I mean it's. We do our best to try to mitigate where we might need to. Okay,
all right. And you said early in the show that they're not so much open to grasslands anymore. It's not what we really have. We have these canopy or woodlands. How have they done to that kind of habitat? How are they getting along with it?
Right. It depends. There's been diet studies done on our elk where it shows them acting somewhat like deer at certain seasons where they're browsers. It's not year round. In late winter, they're going to be more of a grazer, finding those open wildlife openings. We have, several hundred acres that we plant to maintain that forage base. But
I guess part of it too is creating the habitat year-round for them.
Yeah, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah,
they're very resourceful. They'll find resources and exploit them, just like any animal would.
And you're, excuse me, you're the elk biologist over there. Who runs the WMA? Who's the manager of North Cumberland?
Right, so that's Joe Elkins. So he's responsible for everything on the WMA. When there's a management plan or there's certain annual objectives, he's the one that's helping craft those and set those. My job is elk management, but I work hand in hand with Joe every day to, do what we need to do to provide for elk and other wildlife, of course.
And did you replace someone? Was there an elk biologist before you?
There was. Steve Bennett was before me, and he retired, 6-8 months ago.
And that's when you decided to leave Arkansas?
Well, I was already here.
Were you? Okay.
I was living in Bristol, working as a statewide turkey biologist for the National Wild Turkey Federation for Tennessee and North Carolina.
Okay. All right. And then the perfect job came open.
Well,
hopefully it's a perfect job. Not all jobs are perfect. There are the good days and the bad days, but you came on over. Is there a big difference in managing elk in Arkansas and Tennessee?
Well, the herd's a little bigger in Arkansas. We've got they had, 700, 800 elk or so. We're about half that. They have a lot of federal land that they're working with federal partners. We don't have that so much.
Okay.
But in general, it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, elk are elk.
Okay. And so this gets some characteristics, and I want to talk to you a little bit about your tracking of them. Just in general, what's the characteristic? How big are our elk in general, the typical size, and then what's the big elk that we have?
Oh, gosh, I don't know what the record even is. But, as far as average size.
Weight-wise, yeah.
Yeah. An adult cow, she's going to be 500 pounds live weight. A dressed animal would be less. A good mature bull, 800 pounds plus. Yeah.
Okay, and then they go by their racks when they're the bulls, and they're 5x5s and 6x6s and so forth and so on. And you got an antler shed out in front of you that somebody donated to us, but this is actually a shed that we were able to get right there. Yeah. And what typical 6x6 maybe, I think, or 7x7.
Yeah, he's a 7. Yeah, that'd be a good one. We see a wide variety, of course, when they're young. They have smaller antlers. They're shed, they're a deer.
Are they like deer that get just in the cervid family, right?
Sure,
and
right.
They shed just like a deer do. So that would be a nice prize to have right there.
That's right. You hear people talk about killing 300, 350-inch bulls out west, and that's really, really big. But honestly, we killed a pretty good bull this fall, and I measured him, and he was like 240 inches or something, and everybody was in shock. He was a great bull, but honestly, a 250-inch bull is really big.
Yeah, I can see where somebody would be pretty proud of that. Two things that go on with them. There's the hunting part of it that goes on, and the viewing part. And there's a place up there called the Hatfield Knob Elk Viewing Area, viewing tower. Tell us a little bit about that, and where is it?
Right, so it's kind of north of La Follette, like if you're going to Jellicoe. It's basically a parking area where you can park your ATV if you're up there riding on the weekend, or if you go up there in a vehicle, you can park. And then it's a short walk, a quarter of a mile or a little more, to a big platform that's an elevated platform, 10 or 12 feet off the ground. And you're overlooking a field that's approximately 35, 40 acres. And we work with a lot of partners to plant that field. Elk use that field a lot, and on average, people are seeing elk when they go there just about any time of year.
You were looking at numbers if we came in and we got up to 16 or 17,000 or whatever a few years ago, and no telling how many thousands have come through since it opened up. But you showed me that most of them are going there. Look like October and November.
Yeah, September, October is really the peak, right?
And why is that?
The boys are going crazy time of year. Yeah.
Are they doing that bugling stuff?
They're doing that bugling stuff, and, they'll spar and fight and carry on.
Right there in front of the tower?
Oh, man. I'm telling you, you can see elk 20 yards away. I mean, it's amazing.
I bet that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I'd ever get tired of that.
I mean, I was there, even before I started, I was there in July, and it was lunchtime. We were eating lunch up there, and you could see elk. Elk were coming out at noon in July. I mean, it's heavily used.
When they have their young, when do they normally have their young?
Yeah, late May into the very early part of June.
Okay, and usually 1 or 2?
Right, so they're different from deer. Deer, on average, a good adult doe is going to have twins. On average, it's 1.8 fawns per doe, give or take. Okay. Elk are different, right? So they're only going to do, 1 calf per year. Occasionally they'll have 2, but it's a lot more rare.
It's a rarity, huh?
Yeah.
And do you know your numbers as far as the male-female ratio up there? I don't know if you can continue that or not.
Yeah. We have goals. We want to have about 40 bulls for every 100 cows or so. So, starting this summer, we're going to start doing some observation surveys to really keep track of that. When you
speaking of keeping track, when you go out there and do track the collared animals, how many do you have, first of all, that are collared, and why are you tracking them right now?
Well, it varies. Depends on how many you add and then how many you drop off. And we're using primarily the old style collars like people would use on their coon dogs or something. but we have some new GPS collars. We have one that's out right now in existence, and it's really neat technology. It's been around for, 10 or 12 years or more, where you're able to get a signal that's sent to a satellite, and eventually that is available to me to download on my computer to where I can see where an animal's been in the, however long back since the collar's been on. And that's really a new technology. That's kind of the new way we want to go, because it's really hard to find animals in this mountainous terrain. If they're on the other side of a mountain, you're not going to hear them with the traditional telemetry.
Okay.
What about that? Are y'all still doing the thermal imaging?
We are. Yeah, we use that, usually early December, late November, early December when we're doing our annual population surveys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Trying to see how far they go and or keeping them on the area, or is that all part of it or no?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see, what they're using at certain times of the year.
Food-wise?
Food-wise, yeah.
Okay.
Habitat types, and then also checking for mortality. So if you have an animal that hasn't moved for a certain period of time, the collar makes a special signal, and you're able to go in and recover the animal.
Do we have some elk that die not necessarily of old age, or there's some that get disease or whatever?
Sure.
Or just weak?
Yeah, there are wild animals out there, getting by, and it's tough. You've got a variety of mortality factors from, parasites to we've had one or two hit by trains. I mean, it's just a variety of things.
Are there any predators?
Well,
outside of the man that we'll talk about in a minute, but are there any predators? Are coyotes a threat to them, or anything else?
I'm not aware of any mortality on adults. Now, it's likely that there's some calves that succumb to bobcats or coyotes, but that's something we're talking about doing in the future, is doing a calf mortality study where we're actually catching newborn calves, outfitting them with these expandable collars, and you're able to track them as they grow and document mortality and survival.
And this now might not be a fair question to you, but you came from Arkansas where they had elk, and I know in Kentucky they have a lot of elk. Do you talk to our Kentucky counterparts about what's going on up there?
Yeah, we actually have a meeting coming up. It's funny you bring that. We have a meeting coming up here in a couple of weeks, and we'll be able to interact and talk about some of that.
Okay, and their population, they have a entirely different scenario. They have a larger population up there because they have a whole lot more land, mining properties. Is that correct?
Right. When they started, they introduced a lot of elk, so a little different from what we did. And I haven't seen any, population estimates for them lately, but it's 8,000 elk maybe or more. And you're right, they have a little bit different topography. We have a lot of, strip mining or deep mines, and they had a lot more surface mining where an entire mountaintop is just removed, which leaves a big flat that is revegetated, and as a result you're out there and it's just these rolling hills. It looks like you're in Montana.
Almost like the savannas you're talking about once they start regenerating,
right.
Correct?
Now that won't last forever, so it's something that they'll have to either burn or mow or herbicide or somehow treat to set it back.
Interesting. That's neat to know, though. We got Kentucky on the side, and we got Arkansas on the side. Are there other states around us that have elk?
Sure. North Carolina, of course, the park, and then they're on some private land over there, and I think they're even talking about maybe a hunting season at some point in North Carolina.
Okay, does Smoky Mountain still have elk over there? They probably would, coming back and forth anyway.
Yeah, they're right there straddling that line.
Okay. Do we have any elk that you think come down from Kentucky?
Yeah, I know we do.
Do you? Okay, keep on coming. Of course, we might send some up there too. But
there's elk have trouble reading signs.
There's no borders with an elk.
Yeah. So certainly we've documented elk that through genetic testing were not our introduced elk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Neat stuff. So let's talk about the hunting part of it. A few years ago, we established a hunting season. Once the biologists felt like the elk were in a good position, they could withstand some hunting pressure.
Right.
Give us a little history of that, and where are we these days?
Right. So it started in, I believe it was fall of 2009.
That sounds right.
Yeah, and it was a fairly limited quota, right? So there was half a dozen folks, usually a youth hunt involved. And it's a really high success hunt most years. We're looking at 65 to 70% success for those hunters that are getting drawn. But it's tough to get drawn, right? There's a lot of
it is. And we're talking, until this year anyway, we're talking only about 5 or 6 tags, and one of them goes to a youth.
Right.
And then one has to be one sort of, as a fundraiser, you bid on it. And then the rest of them are for anybody that's lucky enough to get drawn. So it's really hard to get there. And if it do, just go out and consider yourself a lottery winner.
That's right.
In a way.
Yeah.
But the drawing comes up. It'll be held, I guess, later in the summer. And the hunts, when is the hunt itself?
So, a little bit of a change we had this fall. An archery season was
Correct.
added.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yep. So in early October, we had a 5-day archery season, 5 hunters, and then we had a week off, and then we started a gun hunt, a 5-day gun hunt, and then subsequent we had a 2-day youth hunt. And it was a little more opportunity. We had basically 11 hunters, hunting this fall. But again, it's tough to get drawn, but it's probably better odds than Powerball.
Yeah, a little better odds than Powerball. And if you go, even if you don't get an elk, it's got to be one of the most exciting things of an avid hunter's life anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you hear these bow hunt. I've hunted elk out west, but I've never been on a hunt where you're able to bugle up elk like you're, calling turkeys and having an 800-pound animal come within 30 yards of you. And you hear these archery hunters talking about it, and some had called in multiple bulls. I mean, it's just it's amazing.
Is it hard and is it hard to scout for an elk over there? It just seems like 400 elk sounds like a lot, but you put them on 200,000 plus acres. That's a lot of acre per elk.
Absolutely.
How difficult is it to scout for these things?
Well, we tried to work with the hunters before the hunt started to kind of get them pointed in some good directions. And you're right, elk, they can be in one spot today, and they might be 10 miles away the next day.
Are they wayfarers? They travel pretty good?
It depends on the time of year.
Mm-hmm.
That late summer, they're not, they find the food. So it depends on what's available. A lot of times they can be pretty consistent, and we had some hunters reporting seeing the same elk in the same areas, and we expect that. But other times of the year they're really highly mobile. But in general, it's like hunting deer. You've got to get out and put the time in, find the sign. Elk Rubs are pretty hard to miss. They will tear up a tree, and they pick those smelly trees like a whitetail would. You find a big pine tree that they leave a lot of scent after they rub them. We have elk wallows out there. You spot those; they're hard to miss. And then certainly finding droppings and big trails. You just got to get out and put the time in.
What do they tend to eat most? What is your study showing there?
Right, so
in Arkansas too. Yeah,
it depends on the time of year. They eat acorns in the fall. September, October, they're going to key in en masse like a whitetail, which is pretty unique. A lot of browse that time of year, transitioning into more of grasses in January, February, March. Then as you get more spring green up, they're transitioning into more of the forbs, the weeds, and that kind of rounds out their year.
Okay, and getting back to the hunting, you think that we'll have a similar season or opportunities coming up in 2017 as we had in 2016?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gone through that season setting process quite yet, but I try to think really long term and try to be strategic with what we're going to do. And as part of that, we're going to develop a new strategic elk plan where we really lay out where we want to be. What are our population goals? What are we willing to live with? What kind of hunts are we going to have? What public opportunity are we going to be able to provide? And, that's kind of a direction we're going to go in this upcoming year.
And also getting back to a question pertaining to Arkansas. Arkansas has, in the last year, found out that they have chronic wasting disease.
Right.
And it's pretty devastating over there, and we're trying to keep it out of Tennessee every way we can. Is an elk, is it subject to CWD? Is it something that could hurt them if it came into Tennessee?
Right. So they're susceptible, and it's always fatal. If an animal gets it, it will be fatal. So that's something we take a lot of pride in testing for. And we test almost every animal that we find dead or is hunter harvested or whatever.
Yeah.
And we've tested, right at 100 animals so far since we've had elk since 2000. Have not found it, of course. Have not found it in whitetails.
Great.
And, we want to do our best to keep it out. And I think there's some new carcass movement regulations that will help keep our deer herd and our elk herd safe.
The import, bringing them back after you take them out of state or whatever. Okay,
Right.
Make sure you understand that. And it's chronic wasting disease, if I didn't say that, CWD. All right. Jason, by the way, was over there when the first one was harvested. I think Todd was too.
Yeah, we showed a
few
picture
years
there
back.
if you were watching.
Was behind it? Okay.
Yeah,
All
Chuck
right.
Flynn.
Great deal. All right, the music says we're about out of time, Brad. Anything you want to add before we get out of here?
No, it's good to see y'all this morning. Let's go crappie fishing.
Yeah, you are fired up.
I am. I'm telling you.
You're talking Doug's language right there.
The turkeys were strutting yesterday in the field. I'm ready to get out.
Everything's going to be talking pretty soon. When the people start talking, it's time to go. Big white bass are running.
Yeah.
Everybody's breaking records except for me and Jason and Todd. Anyway.
Yeah, we're sitting right here in the studio.
Dr. Miller, thanks for being on here.
Good to be here.
Good interview, and we hope to get you back sometime. And if you want to ever add something or give us announcements, we'll make them, all right?
All right. We appreciate it. Hey, watch this show at TWRA TV, listen at TNWildcast.com, and we're always on our website, TNWildlife.org. So keep coming back.
See you next week.